out today to a nice landmark that I want you to see. I'm going to enter in the coordinates, the details, the address into this GPS device. Aren't these things great? You just enter in your destination, give it an address, even give it a general intersection, and it'll call out to you the directions. So that as I'm driving along, come to an intersection, turn right, turn left, continue forward, it tells me what to do. You know, in driving along, perhaps you've been using one of these and you miss a turn. Well, it'll say recalculating. Go back again and recheck the coordinates, tell you where to turn around, how to get back on path. Yeah, this is a handy little device. It'll help us get where we're going today. Let me show you what I want you to see.
Please drive to highlighted route. Continue 400 feet, then turn left on Bellman Lane.
This GPS unit is really like my directional conscience.
4.2 miles, then take exit 7 on right to North 3rd Street.
It's given me the insight where to go, when I should turn, when I should continue on the path. And yet, it's my hands on the steering wheel. I'm actually performing the actions. My feet are on the pedals. I'm operating the clutch, the brakes, the gas. My hands on the gear shift. I'm changing the speeds of the transmission. But it's the GPS that's really giving me the directional guidance. It's my conscience, if you will, to get me to my destination. It's interesting to me, though, because what could happen if I didn't have the GPS? I mean, think about it for a minute. I got my hands on the wheel. I'm operating the gas and the brakes. It's possible without the GPS that I would never lose control of the car, never run off the roadway, never spin out of control, and yet still wind up incredibly lost. Maybe it wouldn't be that bad, but certainly it could be that while driving, while enjoying the ride, while operating the transmission, steering the wheel, without that directional conscience, without the GPS, maybe I don't get incredibly lost, but I still could end up at a destination that I never really intended reaching. It could be that I have a GPS device, and it's on, and it's giving me directional guidance. But I choose not to listen to it. I choose to ignore it. I think, you know what? There's a better way. There's an alternate route. I know something the GPS doesn't see. But again, if I'm not listening to that directional guidance, I could end up somewhere I never intended to be. I've come to find out that there's some people who live their lives that way. Because you see, I think the GPS unit is like our inner values, our personal values, where the GPS gives us directional guidance for how we operate a car. Our personal values, they give us directional guidance for how we operate our lives. It's at those points of decision, those intersections in life, that I turn to my values. I look to the things that matter the most, the things that motivate me. And those are the things that at life's intersections, you tell me to turn right, turn
In
left.
48 miles, take exit 5 on right to Elm Street, then turn right.
There are some people who, they either ignore their inner values or they're living lives really without the consideration. Those folks may never, it seems, lose control. Their hands are on the wheel. They're operating the accelerator and the brakes. They may end up somewhere they never intended to be. They may end up incredibly lost.
Take exit 5 on right to Elm Street, then turn right.
I believe that values help us to determine our proper final destination. Values are good for both direction and destination. When we follow our values, we'll end up at the destination that we really desired. It's beneficial. It's where we wanted to be. As a matter of fact, we've arrived at the place I wanted to show you. This is our destination. In late May of 1804, a group known as the Corps of Discovery departed from this spot under the direction of Captains William Clark and Meriwether Lewis. At the time, Lewis was 29 years old. Clark was 33. It had been commissioned by President Thomas Jefferson to explore the Louisiana Purchase. They were also to travel up the Missouri River to establish U.S. trade and sovereignty with the people who lived along that river. And they were also to establish a U.S. discovery of the Pacific Northwest. In the course of their journey, they accomplished their goals. They followed the Missouri River all the way to its headwaters. And then they crossed over the Continental Divide. And finally, they stepped foot into the shores of the Pacific Ocean. It was then, in March of 1806, that they turned around and they headed back home. They came back here and arrived in St. Louis 2 years, 4 months, and I believe it was 10 days later. They had accomplished what they set out to do. The journey of the Corps of Discovery is historic. It's in the record books, it's known, it's renowned, it's noted here and other places by this monument. And the reason is, these men, they didn't get lost in the exploration. They didn't get distracted in the discovery. Rather, they stuck to their goals. They mapped out, they enjoyed the discovery. They appreciated and pursued all the things that were involved in that exploration. And yet they never lost sight of their goals. They were explorers. They enjoyed the discovery, but they also achieved their goals. And our hope in this series is to assist Christian 20-somethings, young adults, with this process of life discovery. This is a time in life, it's an age in life where certainly you're discovering your strengths, your weaknesses, your likes, your dislikes, your interests, those things that you would enjoy pursuing. And yet it's very important that we not get lost in the process of discovery. It's a natural process. It's part of the human life cycle. And yet it's just a part. We're not to remain there, because we're called, like Lewis and Clark, to be explorers. We don't lose sight of our goals. So Where are you going? What's your chosen destination? Who's giving you directions? These are some of the things we'll explore. Come on, let me join you in the journey. You know, much of the time, life following the path is pretty straightforward. The path is easily discernible, it's well marked. And you know, staying on the path and within its guidelines, it's really doable. It's not really rocket science. Fortunately, it's not always that way. Sometimes we come upon an intersection in life, a place where I'm going to have to decide, do I go to the left or do I go to the right? Or that's another path even heading off a little kind of straight, kind of to the left. What do I do now? At times, when we reach these intersections in life, the way's pretty clear. It's a simple decision. There's a sign or our GPS or it's familiar territory. We've made this kind of decision before. But at other times, the way's not so clear. And at those times, we really need to evaluate where we are, evaluate our surroundings. In fact, it might be good to pause, maybe sit down, practice some discernment. To discern, that means you use your senses, your understanding, to evaluate the circumstances, the surroundings. We need to use discernment before we make a good decision, before we make a judgment. In this case, before I go right or left or continue on in a forward manner. You know, I pull out a bottle, gonna get a drink, some refreshment, but things aren't always what they appear to be. I mean, clearly our first assumption is that this is water. But the bottle's tinted purple, and you don't really know for sure. Yeah, it might be water, but it might be soda. Maybe it's Sprite. Maybe it's 7-Up. Well, I need to use some discernment to make a determination, to make a judgment. And I'd use my senses. My sight, of course, it's a clear liquid, but maybe I'll look for the bubbles of carbonation. And then there's touch. I could pour a little out in my hand, and usually soda leaves a sticky residue. I could smell and see if there's an aroma of soda. Water, of course, doesn't have a smell. And then the clearest one is, we'll just taste it. Yeah, it's water. But why would you take the time to do that? You know, who cares? You're just thirsty. Anything will do. Well, that's true. Some decisions, it really doesn't matter. You don't need to practice discernment. But if I were a diabetic and I were in the middle of exercise, then whether or not this is soda or water is a more important decision. And there are times even when those senses aren't as clear when we're trying to discern something. Let me show you something. I have here two different pocket watches. Both of them are mine. But I would tell you they're very different. One of these pocket watches I received as a gift from my mom when I was younger, and it holds sentimental value, but really, it doesn't have a lot of monetary value today. The other pocket watch has quite a bit of value. It was made in the late 1800s. It's probably much more than 100 years old. And most jewelers would value it at somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000. And it also holds for me incredible sentimental value because it was given to me by my grandfather on one of our last times to have a conversation before he passed. But to discern which one's valuable and which one is not so valuable, again, I can turn to my senses. Smell, well, that's not going to help me here. Hearing, well, maybe I can hear the movements. Sight, certainly there's some things I can look at, some markings, maybe some engravings. But frankly, I'm not a jeweler. I'm not a watchmaker. Using those things is not clear to me, and in order to really discern which one is of most value, my senses are going to have to be better trained than they are right now. So while an untrained eye like mine might not be able to quickly discern which watch was most valuable, a watchmaker, a trained eye, would pretty quickly be able to discern which watch was worth more. And you know, Scripture talks about being able to discern which is right, which is wrong, about our senses being trained. In fact, the writer of Hebrews had this to say: "For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God. And you have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But solid food belongs to those who are of full age, that is, those who, by reason of use, have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil." There are a couple of points that are valuable for us at this place in our life from this text. The first is the expectation that our senses would be trained. The writer seems to be disappointed that his intended audience is still drinking milk. They ought to be on to solid food. The other thing to take away is the exercise, that being able to use our senses naturally and spiritually is a matter of practice. Practice makes perfect. And so we're called in Scripture to use our senses, our natural, our spiritual senses, to discern our direction. And that's very important for young adults. It's very important at this portion of the journey, this life stage, because there are some decisions, some intersections like this path that are very important. And they're a lot more like discerning a valuable watch from an invaluable one than from making a quick decision. There's college choices, there's career choices, there's peer relationships, choosing a spouse. These are intersections along life's pathway that demand our best discernment. We need to make the right choice.